Lego Jaws. Set number 21350, and it's about to retire. The set comes with a boat, a diorama base plate, and a stand so you can display the set in a couple of different ways, as well as 3 minifigures who are making a series of increasingly poor decisions. So what's this set all about, and should you pick it up? If you're a Lego fan and a Jaws fan, then the box art does exactly what marketing needed it to do. Just simply show the brilliant Lego set in all its glory so that you can stop browsing for silly little sets for your children and spend your pay packet on this lovely thing. Straight away you can see that it's a set for adults because the box art, if you look closely, has absolutely no creativity whatsoever. Lego do what they do with their adult sets, where all sense of fun is completely removed to give that premium feel. Then there's the subtle blue gradient behind the set, which I can only assume took a seasoned designer a whole afternoon to create in Canva. The good news is that this comes in one of Lego's new boxes, the ones that fold flat, which unironically is becoming one of my favourite new features from the Lego group, because I keep all of my Lego boxes as if they're something important, so my house is now mostly cardboard. There's just entire rooms with empty boxes, creating a shrine to my poor financial decisions. And at some point you run out of space, which is why I had to get rid of the sofa. If you, like me, need to attend some sort of meeting as an intervention because you keep all of your Lego boxes, then this folding box is a bit of a breakthrough. Inside you'll find paper bags, which is good for the environment. Although it also almost guarantees that at some point during the build, you'll be missing a piece that's tucked into a corner of a bag you've already thrown aside. And the instructions themselves show Bruce the shark in the same position as the iconic poster, which is a nice touch because it means before you've even started building, you can tell the design team really have put their heart into this set. But what about the minifigures? In this set you get 3 minifigures, which isn't a lot, but honestly they're the only ones you need. You get Chief Martin Brody, Matt Hooper the marine biologist, and Sam Quint, all 3 incredible characters from this movie, and all looking absurdly phenomenal in this set. All 3 just have amazingly designed faces, which are instantly recognisable as the characters because while the clothing printing is very good, it's the faces and the facial expressions that really sell a licensed character as a Lego minifig. And bearing in mind Lego figures don't have noses and are essentially just small plastic heads with the same level of detail as a road sign, the design team have absolutely smashed it with these minifigures. There's also some quality of life inclusions too. Chief Brody has dual molded arms and Hooper has a really nice detailed hat and hair combo for the hairpiece, just really intricately done elements which just match the premium feel that this set calls for, and it's really pleasing to see. The boat is the first thing you build in this set, and it's an absolute whirlwind to put together. Ignoring all the Easter eggs that we'll come to later, the shape of this thing is simply incredible, and the techniques they use to achieve it are pretty staggering. I'm currently building the front section, and the whole thing you build upside down in order for the designers to get the shaping they wanted. It's wonderful. Although it means for a brief moment you do lose confidence as to whether you're building it correctly, or simply participating in some kind of elaborate mistake. It should be said that the boat building can be a bit fiddly at times. The front of the boat has a tendency to come apart if you so much as look at it wrong, meaning you have to hold it together while building and not fling it out the window in anger. You also get an interior, which is accessed by lifting the roof off of the cabin. Inside there's a table and bench from the Indianapolis speech, along with a few other bits and pieces tucked in for good measure. Now it's tight in there, properly tight. The minifigures will be sucking in their beer bellies to fit on the couch, but this is clearly deliberate. The designers have prioritised how the boat looks from the outside on display, rather than bulking it out just to give your minifigures a bit more legroom. Because yes, they could have made it wider, but then it would have looked wrong, and that would have been far worse. So while the interior is great fun to build and nicely detailed, it's very much have a look and appreciate it, then put the roof back on and admire it from the outside. The boat itself has some amazing parts usage. We have a shepherd's hook for the ladder, and the platform at the front uses B1 battle droid arms as railing supports with hot dog pieces too. Now I love a bit of clever parts usage as much as anyone, but I can just only see the hot dogs here rather than whatever they were meant to be. I just see lunch, which is slightly distracting because now I'm admiring the build while also wondering what's in the fridge. That said, it's such a small detail that unless you're really looking for it, it just blends in with everything else, which means that most people will admire the build and only later realise they've been staring at a sausage the whole time. The boat itself, while brilliantly shaped, is absolutely covered in stuff. There are tools, bits of equipment and all sorts of little odds and ends scattered across to the point where it almost looks a bit messy, but that's exactly why it works. Because the Orca in the film isn't some pristine showpiece, it's a slightly knackered working boat that's been patched up, added to and generally lived in, and this captures it perfectly. It doesn't look neat, it looks used, which in this case is exactly what you want. I've seen some people complain about the colour scheme of this set, which is odd because to my eye it matches the film rather well. I'm not entirely sure what they were expecting, perhaps something dredged straight out of the North Sea. Yes, in reality the boat would have been more weathered, more faded and a bit more tragic, but this is Lego. You're working with solid blocks of colour, not 40 years of saltwater neglect. If you really want something that looks properly worn out, I'm sure there's a bloke down the road trying to get rid of a very questionable dinghy as we speak. If anything, the part that could have used a bit more attention here is the ocean. It does the job, but it's a bit one note. A few splashes of transparent blue or some variation in shades would have gone a long way to making it feel a bit more alive. As it stands, the boat looks fantastic. It's just floating on what appears to be a very clean, very committed piece of plastic. In the set you also get a display stand which lets you pose the set in a slightly more dramatic way. Now the stand itself is a bit clunky, but it does the job, and more importantly it didn't have to be included at all, so while it might not be the most elegant thing in the world, it's still a nice extra that goes a bit above and beyond. And what about the shark? Well, for Jaws, the most famous shark movie of all time, there isn't actually much shark in it. The screen time for Bruce the shark is 3 of the 130 minutes of the film's runtime. Of course, the real world reason for the lack of screen time was the limitation of effects at the time. They used animatronic sharks for most of the shots, which is why the movie still holds up today. But what about the shark? Well, it's incredible. Fully brick built rather than any specially created molds, and so it's satisfying to build. The fins are a particular favourite part of mine, and the eyes too give it that dead eye feel. The set does have a sticker sheet, but no need to throw a tantrum as it's minimal. Nothing like some of the other sets where you open the box and you're slapped in the face with a bedsheet sized sticker sheet. And thankfully some of the more important elements in this set are printed, including the Orca boat name, the Lego Jaws logo, and the quote tile itself. Speaking of the quote, it couldn't have been anything else, could it? The line was improvised by actor Roy Schneider on the set of Jaws and has become one of the most iconic lines of all time. There's a lovely interview of him talking about it and how he's proud of the fact that the line is used not just in pop culture now, but it's bled into the English language and people use it for when they're in over their head with struggles in their everyday life. And all that came down to this absolute disaster of a movie to make, Jaws. Usually when I review these dioramas, I mention potential other quotes that could have been used in place of the one they actually used on the set, but this is the most obvious quote to use here. Anyone suggesting that a different quote should be used needs to have their last 2 brain cells bonked together. The fact it's diorama is the perfect choice. It means that the whole thing can be wrapped up rather than having a set where you just get the shark, the boat and no water, which would feel so empty. The water, while yes, would have done well to have a few splashes of different shades of blue, is still really dynamic and fluid, really good looking, especially those white pieces showing the breaking of the water. And the whole thing just overflows the diorama. You have water flowing off the back and the boat placed on the edge so it feels like it's flowing off the front, and the diorama just feels alive. It's only barely being contained by these struggling black border pieces. This is the 3rd Steven Spielberg Lego diorama to come out in the last few years, alongside the Indiana Jones and the Jurassic Park set. Bearing in mind that Lego is not specifically licensed to Spielberg, it's just another indication of the impact of that man's work on pop culture that you can buy all 3 of these in Lego. All 3 of these, of course, having belting music by the great John Williams. Give me a John Williams minifigure and I'll sell anything else I own. Comparing the three Spielberg dioramas is a little tricky. Of course, personal preference for each film is going to be the deciding factor as to which one of these you buy. But I've got to say, I think I prefer the Raiders diorama over this one, but only because of the limitations of a Jaws set. With Raiders you get a temple, and therefore you can build up a fuller feeling environment with colourful walls, whereas on the ocean there's just nothing. There's no side to build, and so the place just feels a little bit more empty. That said, I am not taking anything away from this set. So far, it's becoming one of my favourite of all time. However, the set doesn't come without its flaws. The string feature on the set is terrible. The lines absolutely needed to be included because without them the whole thing would be missing a fairly important part of the model, but the execution is not great. Because first you're required to tie knots with the smallest pieces of string known to mankind, so unless you happen to have been in sailing club or hold some sort of advanced qualification in knot theory, it becomes more finicky than it needs to be. And once they're up, they look a bit weird because if you don't get them tight enough, they just hang there limply. And because they weigh about as much as a single thread of a jumper, they don't sit in a nice, satisfying curved line either. They just sort of scrunch and weave about in a way that looks mildly pathetic. But if you tie up the ropes too tight, then the mast itself gets pulled over because the mast isn't locked in and as secure as it should be. So you end up in the slightly frustrating position where the ropes are either too loose to sit properly or too tight and the set looks like you've put it together wrong and that the Lego bricks are under tension. There are also a few other nitpicks. The buoy in the water is actually a really nice dynamic addition to the set, but it's been placed directly behind the big grey shark, rendering it invisible. There's also a small chair with a fishing line detail, which is a nice touch, but for reasons I cannot fully understand, there are no studs on the chair. So the minifigure either slides straight off, or you have to balance him in place standing up, which gives the slightly concerning impression that he's gone insane. The shark stand has a printed Lego Jaws logo, but then puts studs for minifigures directly in front of it, meaning that you can perfectly cover up the most displayable tile in the entire set. And the shark itself, once you take it off the stand and place it into the diorama, which is definitely the better option to display it, you're left with half a multicoloured shark. Then you have to decide what to do with it. I don't know, because if you're like me, you're not really displaying it on the stand, then it should just go in the bin of Lego pieces used for mock making. But then if you're also like me, you immediately start worrying that you've made a terrible mistake and that one day you'll need that exact half a shark for something important, so you couldn't possibly take it apart. So you end up putting it near the diorama anyway on display, thereby making the whole thing look significantly worse. However, none of these issues come anywhere near to ruining what is a beautifully constructed set. You can really tell the designers have poured an extraordinary amount of time, care and borderline obsession into this thing. And that shows itself in all sorts of ways, but mostly in the sheer density of references and tiny details scattered throughout the build. The set includes loose cage panels and divers tanks to represent the cage diving scene. The clever use of handlebars and small elements to form that beautifully simple suggestion of the shark's skeletal jaw. The unmistakable yellow buoy barrels patiently waiting to fly into the water and be hidden behind the shark. And of course the bucket of chum, which is used just before the signature line of the movie. And it's not just filling the set with details from the movie either. The design team have put so much care into the set that they're designing their own references. Take the newspaper tile for example, a fictional publication of the newspaper used in the film, but the title of the article, Campbell, is actually a nod to the Lego Ideas fan Johnny Campbell, who originally submitted the idea. And then there's the shark sketch itself, deliberately crude, almost childlike, and lifted straight from Quint's chalkboard drawing of the film. It's the sort of detail you wouldn't even notice if you weren't looking closely, but once you do, it makes the whole thing feel oddly affectionate. And it's those little touches that elevate it from nice model of the film into something that feels genuinely cared for. And if this is to be the only Jaws set Lego ever makes, then at least we can say they didn't just do it justice, they absolutely nailed it. Here's an image of the design team from the instructions, and they're dressed as the three characters that they've so lovingly recreated in this set, and I think it perfectly sums up this. It's clearly been made by people who respect and love the movie, and so if you do too, then you need to pick it up before this set retires forever. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed the review, then subscribe for more reviews like this. And if you want to help out a new channel like mine, give the video a like. New videos coming out regularly, and I'll see you on the next one.